So the Fourth Big Worker Co-op is a non-share capital worker co-op, and we work to do beautiful, affordable, sustainable houses. We try to use materials with low embodied energy, do straw bale, as well as other all kinds of various retrofits and additions and projects with hopefully as much of a focus on energy efficiency and environmental sustainability as possible. So we are a not-for-profit co-op, but that doesn't mean that we can't make a surplus. We don't make a profit, but as a non-share co-op, we do endeavor to gain a surplus while also providing good work and good jobs for the people in our organization and building good projects. And we have a focus as well on education and training and building more sustainable communities overall. So we have some social goals, some environmental goals, educational, and work-related goals. So we do, the difference being a co-op is when we do make a surplus, it doesn't go to shareholders, it gets plowed back into the organization to build our capacity or to better remunerate the workers. Who here is a member of a co-op? Mountain Equipment Co-op. Mostly we've got, who's a co-op, friendly world here. Anybody started a co-op or two in their day? Couple hands. So you're familiar, cooperative is an autonomous association, basically a group of people who are working to benefit the people who work there or use the co-op services. One of the things that Greg and others of us have talked about and you hear a lot about is the triple bottom line, the people, planet, profit, how do we make all these things happen? And co-ops, the international principles of co-ops basically take that question and say, well, what does that look like? What does it look like to actually implement trying to maintain yourself as an organization while being a benefit to your local community and at large and locally? And so these are 7 principles that are actually part of the legal structure of the organization. They are certainly by no means proprietary to co-ops, and other types of organizations can use them and do use them. But as a co-op, one of the unique factors is that those principles, autonomy, independence, member economic participation, cooperation, are all intrinsic to the very structure. And so there are many organizations who may not be incorporated as co-ops but try to abide by the co-op principles, but as a co-op, there are some very strict things you do have to abide by. You have a different purpose. The purpose is to meet the needs of the members as opposed to maximize the profit for the shareholders. The control structure is different, so rather than having the amount of votes related to the amount of shares or economic interest you have in the co-op, it's related to the individual member. And allocation of profit is based on use of the services. Of course, co-ops are a very strong presence in Canada and a growing presence, and not only in Canada broadly in a lot of different sectors, but also in the building and architectural sector. There are sustainability group out in BC and all across Canada now. They do a variety of services for the housing and sector as a worker co-op. There's a worker co-op that does green building out on the East Coast. And there are, of course, a lot of housing co-ops that are working on building sustainable projects and sustainable communities. And one of the things about cooperatives, and that has been shown, and we, research suggests it relates to this alternative purpose, this flexibility, this broader view of what it means to be an organization and the ways that you go about making decisions, is that they are actually inherently more sustainable and are far more likely to be in business in the long run as opposed to regularly incorporated businesses. Twice as many co-ops stay in business over a 10-year period compared to other businesses. So a couple other examples, the Lopez Community Land Trust. These are some international examples of co-ops doing renewable energy and community sustainability projects. This is a cooperative community housing project on Lopez Island for affordable housing. This is an architectural co-op, workers co-op in the UK. There's another one, Collective Architecture, that I found as well, and they've been incorporated since the 60s and operate as a worker co-op in their architecture firm, and I think they have about 35 partners now in their firm. And they do have a focus on sustainability and energy efficiency projects as well. So the other question about how do we make all this work? How do we run our businesses so that we're valued, that we value our own services, and how do we then also convince everybody else? We all know why everybody has to build green. It's so obvious. Why isn't everybody doing it? They shouldn't be allowed not to. There should be a law. There aren't enough. We all know. So, but how do we talk about it in a way that brings everybody else to the light? Why hasn't everybody else come to this realization that is so inherently obvious to all of us? So, that didn't click through. All right, these words are supposed to bombard at you with, fast action, but the end result is the same. We talk about comfort, health, energy efficiency, high performance, sustainability, regenerability, resilience, restorative. We have all this different language, and we sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. Some things meet with certain people. Other people glaze over when we start talking about indoor air quality. We're passionate about all these things, and how do we sell this, and how do we convince other people that this is really what they want, what works? And we try different things. We talk about all the toxic chemicals that are in your building materials and in your house, and how you want to build green and with more environmentally friendly materials because you don't want to expose yourself and get cancer. And does that make everybody run screaming away from us? Maybe. We talk about climate change, this crisis that we have where, we have no other choice. Building the built environment, our activities as builders have such a huge impact on the climate and on greenhouse gases and on the environment. And it's such a also low-hanging fruit, an obvious solution, and it's a necessity. And we get told this all along. And of course, there are a variety of additional environmental issues in Canada that we know. And some of our clients already know this and come to us with these concerns and have that as their values, and some do not. And how do we make those connections? There has been some research, a fair bit of research in this area, of course, in Green Building Trends, a report that came out last year. Reducing energy consumption was a top environmental reason for builders wanting to build green. And health and well-being being a really important factor as well for reasons for choosing green building. And productivity, of course. More comfortable green buildings tends to be healthier, more comfortable, brighter, better lit places to work, and do contribute, research has shown, to worker productivity. And the research has shown it contributes to health too. I don't know if any of you read the Martin Holliday, Lloyd Alter back and forth about how do we sell this. Conversation happened recently, and so to Lloyd Alter's point, there is actual scientific evidence that shows that green buildings can and are healthier. Whether or not, to Martin's point, that means anything to anybody, and the people that we're trying to convince is another question. So I look forward to hearing what you have found effective. But energy efficiency obviously seems to be something that is catching some traction and people are more interested in. And I don't know if, I'm sure all of you have watched the Passive Buildings Canada seminar where Adam Cohn talked about equity and electrons. If you haven't, it's fascinating. I'm sure it's on the Passive Buildings Canada website. Yes? Yes? Okay. So I was really struck by this because we've heard about energy mortgages and how CMHC provides a bit of a discount on your insurance if you upgrade your house to a certain standard, and you can get a couple extra $1,000s of equity with certain banks if you do meet a certain energy efficiency standard. But he really drives home the point with his clients that you think you have one mortgage, but you actually have two. You pay an energy bill every month. Can you not pay that? Do you have any choice? You don't have a choice. It's fairly consistent. You have to pay it. It's basically like two mortgages. You have an electron mortgage and a bank mortgage. So if you can, what would you rather do? Buy electrons every second and have that continually having to be purchased just because you do need to keep your house livable? Or would you rather plow that into your equity of your home? And then it, as he says, becomes a no-brainer. So he says he's been having quite success with that. And of course, he's got the mustache to show that he's business. So I did some math. and I wrote it down because I wouldn't be able to do it in my head when we were all talking. So my per kilowatt hour price for electricity at my house, when I factor in not the flat rate stuff, but all the stuff that's actually attached and changes depending on how many cents per kilowatt hour I use, is 17.56. That's the average. That's not peak. That's average. That's because I've got about 5 cents of additional charges per kilowatt hour that go on my bill every month, as does all of you. So Stats Canada says the average home, at least 2,500 square foot house, which is not mine, but in 2011 used 161 gigajoules, which apparently, according to the internet, works out to 44,722 kilowatt hours. So engineers, don't use your math. Which would cost, this assumes you're running your entire house off electricity. So we're making some assumptions here. All your energy needs are being met with electricity, which is not typical in a lot of urban centers. But so your energy costs, if you were electric, would be about $8,000 a year in electricity costs. So what if you could do an 80% reduction on that? Passive house can, right? So that's why not? So now you have saved yourself $6,200 a year. Say over 30 years, energy goes up 2%. Who thinks it's going to go up more? So you have saved over 30 years $254,000 in electricity by reducing your energy costs by 80%. I would like to think that that will convince a client to spend the extra money on the insulation and the things they're not going to see behind the wall rather than, or in addition to, the gold taps and the granite countertops. So I look forward to hearing about all your various successes with this methodology. It can get very discouraging when we all know situations where beautiful houses have been torn down to build something that's maybe a little bit more beautiful or not, where we think we have a client who wants something green, but then they see some other beautiful bells and whistles that they would rather have, and they decide to cut their insulation budget. Things can get discouraging. Some people we just don't reach or just don't ever call us because they think that green building is inherently ugly or inherently expensive or whatever things that they've got wrapped up in their head. Some people, just yesterday I got called about whether or not I could help a builder get his windows not to the point where they can meet code because they're going to call it seasonal, the 6,000 square foot home in Muskoka that's 70% glazing, but could I at least make it so that it doesn't actually fry the occupants inside? Could I find a glazing that would, in the summertime, not cook anybody? So, that can be a little disheartening. So, do I say no, cook, or do I help them? What do we do? How do we take that little thread and see if we can maybe unwind it a little further? Well, and the reality is, if we, and I have also suppliers who say they have lines of products where they do not, you probably know these people, do not mention one word about the fact that it's environmentally friendly. They talk about how beautiful it is, how durable it is, but as soon as they say it's environmentally friendly and it does great things for the planet, then it's not good enough. So maybe sometimes we don't talk about it. We always have conversations with our clients. What do you care about? And then we go from there. Do you try to, and we try to shape things to what their concerns. Are you concerned about your indoor air quality? Do you have allergies? Are you worried about climate change? Do you love polar bears? What is your thing? Because everyone's got a various set of priorities, and it's really hard to find one formula that's going to really make that hard connection for people to want to see what is inherently obvious to the rest of us, and we don't understand why they don't. So, in closing, we all know that if we care about humans, and one or two at least out there, and we want to do things, we are the people in the room that need to be making things change dramatically. Now, we may be on a cusp. This is, we live in interesting times. There's a lot of energy. There's a lot of things happening, some positive, some change at least. So what's going to happen to the world of green building? The expectation is that it's going to expand. It has to anyway. So assuming that we do, find some way to mitigate some of these problems, our industry is going to explode. And how are we going to deal with that? as businesses, as entrepreneurs, as a community of people who are working passionately on work that we all care about. I used to work in the solar industries, solar photovoltaic industry. And I saw what happened there when, and I know many of us have seen booms and busts at various areas of the green building industry as well, but when there was a huge boom in the Solar Industry Association and everybody was a solar installer, everybody was a solar investor, everybody had solar panels to sell to somebody, and 6 months earlier there had been about as many people in this room in Canada selling solar panels who knew what a solar panel was. And it was a really disruptive time for the solar industry. And there was a lot of people who didn't survive that disruption. And a lot of lessons learned. And fortunately, the solar industry continues to grow and sort of has continued on and is more and more a part of our lives as well as builders. But I want to work with all of you to make sure that we work well as a community to best deal with our inevitable increase in business and our inevitable increase in skills that are needed and all the knowledge in here that needs to get out to the rest of the room. And I look forward to more conversations about how we all change the world and at least keep our cars on the road or our buses and our bicycles, because getting to our job site, our electric ones. So thank you very much.
Thank you.